أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum, and welcome to another edition of Perspective. My name is Faizel Patel. In tonight's show, inshallah, we'll be looking at Trump's immigration plan, the killing of 6 people at a masjid in Quebec in Canada. Is S04 CEO Brian Molefe becoming an MP? We speak to Karima Brown and also get insight on the State of the Nation address, which takes place next week. The African Union has a new chair, and we also speak about World Hijab Day. You're welcome to interact with me by sending me a mail on Faizel at itvnetworks.tv. Drop me a tweet on @FaizelPatel143, or you can even comment on facebook.com/Faizel Patel. Now, a broad coalition of U.S. technology firms has begun planning a joint legal strategy challenging President Donald Trump's executive order barring refugees and many Muslims from American soil. Now, more than 20 firms from the sector were expected to attend a meeting to discuss legal options on the ban, which was expected to have large impacts on Silicon Valley and other tech firms which employ thousands of immigrants. For those that are not aware, Trump on Friday last week signed an executive order that severely restricts immigration from 7 Muslim countries, including Iran, Iraq, Syria, Sudan, Libya, and Somalia. Days after signing the document, questions about its reach and legality are increasing, with protests across the United States.
This is not a Muslim ban, simply. It is a Muslim exclusion order.
We believe it is un-American, it is illegal, and that's why we are confident that our lawsuit will be seen favorably, because we are defending the American traditional values and the constitutional values that grant people equal protection and also does not favor one religion over the other. Donald Trump, in his executive order, is sending a very clear message that he's going to favor Christians over Muslims.
Coming on to another story, a group in Canada has raised more than $161,000 to help the families of the victims killed in a masjid shooting in Quebec on Sunday night. Have you heard about this story? Absolutely terrible. More than 50 people were in the Quebec Islamic Cultural Center when the shooting began, and witnesses describe a scene of chaos as worshippers scrambled to find friends and loved ones. French-Canadian University student Alexandre Bissonnette, who is just 27 years old, was charged on Monday with 6 counts of first-degree murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. Now, you may be asking, why not terrorist? Well, according to police in Canada, they didn't find sufficient evidence to suggest that it was a terrorist attack. No doubt you are furious. A lot of people are furious. Social media has been abuzz saying that it should be labeled as a terrorist act. Canada's Prime Minister called the shooting rampage as an act of terrorism against Muslims. So let me know what your thoughts and comments are. Obviously, a lot of outrage. There were initially 2 suspects, but obviously the one was released due to a lack of evidence. But in this particular case, let's ask the question, had it been a church, had it been a temple, would we have got as a lesser coverage? No, obviously not. We would have got much more coverage. So Prime Minister of Canada called it an act of terrorism. Justin Trudeau, the President of Canada, says that his heart is with the Canadian people. He called it an act of a total despicable act. Real tragedy. And obviously let us remember those people that have passed away in our duas.
It's very, very astonishing tragedy, because it happened inside the mosque, and it's unimaginable.
Well, the emotion is very bad about what happens. To see people praying, and at the end they are killed.
It's something that happens other places, but not here. Canada
Not here is the first time in Canada that we have seen this horrible thing.
Last night, this community experienced something that no community should ever have to know. Unspeakable cruelty and violence perpetrated on those who came together in friendship and in faith. We stand with you. We love you and we support you. And we will always defend and protect your right to gather together and pray today and every day. Our responsibility to those who have died and were injured, and our responsibility to you, citizens of Quebec and members of the Muslim community all across Canada, endures. Muslim Canadians have helped build the communities we call home. They own businesses and create jobs. They teach in our schools. They care for us when we are sick. Muslim Canadians are valued members of every community, and wherever they live, they deserve to feel welcomed and safe. They are home here. J'espère de tout cœur que les Canadiens répondront à la tragédie d'hier soir de façon à rendre hommage aux vies perdues et à incarner les valeurs qui nous unissent tous. N'oublions jamais que nous sommes à notre meilleur lorsqu'on s'occupe les uns des autres. Nous partageons toujours plus que ce qui nous divise. Nous sommes tous Canadiens. Que la paix nous unisse tous. Merci.
Now, this is a story, we're coming back local now. Former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe may be on his way to Parliament, but ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe says Molefe is not yet on the ANC's list for Pali, or Parliament as we know it. Now, Mantashe has explained that half of the list of people nominated for Parliament came from provinces, while the other half were nominated at a national level. Now, there is already warnings that if he should be sworn in, that is, Molefe be sworn in as an MP and even end up being appointed finance minister. I know, a real shocker there. As a rumor would have it, he should expect to be under constant public scrutiny. Now, I spoke to political analyst Karima Brown about Molefe being possibly an MP, and obviously Gwede Mantashe's comments as well. And then also next week, myself and a lot of the ITV crew, including Mohammed and many others, Farad as well, Mona Suleiman Rawat from Radio Islam will also be there. We're going to be in Cape Town for President Jacob Zuma's State of the Nation address, and inshallah, I asked Karima about that as well, what her thoughts on the State of the Nation address is, what Zuma might discuss. We know that Julius Malema might possibly not be there. He said that he is studying for an exam. So is there going to be dramatics in the House? Well, we're going to have to wait and see. But let's hear what Karima had to say. I conducted this interview a little earlier. ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe says the name of former Eskom CEO Brian Molefe is not on the party's list for Parliament. Now, the Sunday Times reported that the ANC in the Northwest wants to put Molefe on its parliamentary list so that he would ultimately become the new finance minister when President Jacob Zuma reshuffles his cabinet. What's your take on this?
Well, I think the Secretary General is right. It's a long way off from Brian Molefe getting onto that list. But we know that these issues can happen very fast. We saw Des van Rooyen and Faizel Buthelezi, two relatively new MPs, being sworn in very quickly. And of course, we know that Des van Rooyen ended up as the finance minister for 4 days, 16 billion rand later. So whilst process is important, these processes can also happen very fast if there is a political drive behind it. But I think the key question here is the kind of risk that President Zuma has the appetite for if he wants to reshuffle the finance ministry. As we know that Pravin Gordhan is locked into a court battle with the Gupta family, very close to the president, and there the issue is that the finance minister wants a declaratory order from the state compelling him or underlining rather the fact that he has no jurisdiction over banks and who they do businesses with. And we know that these businesses ceased to do business with the Oakbay family company that is owned by the Guptas. Now, Brian Molefe, in the State of Capture report, seen as a very, or demonstrated as a very close associate of the Gupta family. We know that he tried to make light of how many times he was phoned by members of that family and how many times he was actually summoned to Saxon World. So Brian Molefe and his relationship with the Gupta family, I think, is a big negative for the president and will not go down well with the markets. It also will not go down within the ANC. As you know, the party is deeply divided, and President Zuma is facing a huge challenge. On the other hand, one might argue that because the Gupta family is so powerful and so close to the president, they might want their man in the treasury. We know that the Denel deal involving President Jacob Zuma's son, Zuma, is stalling there because the Treasury has argued that they didn't sign off on the deal. So there are very real material interests for Zuma supporters who have used state-owned institutions and state-owned companies to advance their personal and economic agenda. There's real reasons why they would want a change in the cabinet, and they would want someone like Brian there. But President Zuma will have to manage and calculate the political costs, given the fact that the markets and, of course, people inside the ANC might not take kindly to that move.
Now, Karima, we just have more than a week to go before the State of the Nation address in Cape Town by President Jacob Zuma. We know that Julius Malema is not going to be there because he's studying for an exam. What do you think Zuma will discuss in his State of the Nation address? What can we look forward to?
Well, if you look at the outcomes of the governing party's Lekgotla, which took place last week, from Wednesday, it ended over the weekend, you will see that the focus has definitely been on the economy. And how could it be anything else if you look at the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality? So I expect President Zuma to focus on the economy. The government is going into a cabinet Lekgotla this week. They don't normally speak after that Lekgotla because they don't want to steal the thunder of the president ahead of SONA. But I think that if one looks at the involvement of President Zuma on pushing particularly for what he terms, or his supporters term, a more radical approach to the economy. President Zuma was personally at the basic education colloquium, and he, of course, has that commission that is dealing with looking at where to find money for higher education. So I think people are going to be looking at government's targets around job creation. We are going to be looking at what kind of monies are going to be available for free higher education and, of course, also basic education. And I think the other big thing is we need to look at whether the ANC's push around returning people or rather returning the land to the people is reflected in government's program of action. If we go back to the January 8th statement of the governing party, land was a big issue. And of course, the governing party is in control at the national level. So one would expect what they prioritize to find its way into the priority and to-do list of President Jacob Zuma. So I think issues around land. But the question is that it's all well and good to say all of this. President Zuma, for example, has focused on land before, promising to provide a land audit so that one can actually see whether the historical injustice around land has been, dealt with, whether there's been redress. 87% of the land was owned by 13% of the people. 22 years into democracy, we need to understand where that process is. And so far, President Zuma hasn't been able to make good on making that land audit available. So it's one thing saying something, it's another thing actually doing it. And people are going to be looking at whether the president is actually able to implement or whether he's just tapping into popular sentiment.
Thank you, Karima, for your time on Perspective this evening.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to be going for a break. After the break, inshallah, we're going to be speaking about the African Union that's got a new chair now. We know that the previous chair was South Africa's Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. She's been touted as a possible leader of the ANC. Well, we're going to have to wait and see later this year when the ANC's elective conference takes place. But let's go for a break. After the break, inshallah, we will continue with Perspective.
النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى إلهي صرت في ظرف عصيب فاكشف البلوى فيا ربي أنا.
Welcome back to Perspective. The African Union, is it just a mouthpiece or does it really have something to say? Well, it's got a new leader now. Ched's Musa Faki Mohammed has been elected as the new chairperson of the African Union Commission in a vote held at the bloc's headquarters in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa on Monday. Now, after 7 rounds of voting, the Chadian Foreign Affairs Minister defeated favourites Amina Mohammed of Kenya and Senegal's Abdoulaye Bathily. Now, 2 other candidates, Botswana's Foreign Minister Pelanomi Venson Moitoi and Mba Moki of Equatorial Guinea also contested for the seat. Now, the 56-year-old father of 5 succeeds South Africa's Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the first woman to lead the bloc of 54 states who did not seek a second term in office after completing a 4-year term. And Kenya was the first to congratulate the newly elected AU chief. Let's have a look at that video.
The task that you have just entrusted me is very heavy to serve Africa in all its diversity and in its various different shades and contradictions, and even to work with its differences is not easy, but the challenges have never frightened me. I therefore commit myself in front of you to take up this responsibility with all my force and commitment.
And finally, February 1st marks the first annual World Hijab Day in recognition of millions of Muslim women who choose to wear the hijab or the scarf and live a life of modesty. Events were held across the world celebrating a woman's right to choose what she wears and promoting tolerance and respect for the personal and religious beliefs of others. Campaigners behind the World Hijab Day urged non-Muslims to wear the Islamic headscarf to show solidarity and help fight bigotry, discrimination and prejudice. ITV spoke to some women who do wear the hijab and the scarf, and I managed to record some of these videos. Let's have a look at what they have to say.
I wear the niqab because it makes me feel protected in the society that we're living in, and I feel that I am protecting the Muslim Ummah with regards to men from lowering their gaze, because that's how I feel about the niqab. And secondly, as a Muslim woman, you protect yourself again, and you covering yourself, so which leads to modesty as well. And I appreciate the fact that in our country we are allowed to wear the niqab. We can practice it freely without being stopped and questioned or asked to remove the niqab, which for us is a sacred thing as Muslim women who wear the niqab. Jazakallah.
What do you see when you look at me? Do you see someone limited or someone free? I wear the niqab because it is my choice. I wear it because it empowers me. It motivates me, it uplifts me. It does not dehumanize me. I am equal, just as you and as any other man. I wear the niqab because it is who I am. Not because my Maker or the Almighty has commanded me to do so.
Unfortunately, we've come to the end of another edition of Perspective for this week. You can join me again next week, inshallah, when we look at stories making local, national and international headlines. You can interact with me by sending me a mail on Faizel at itvnetworks.tv, drop me a tweet on @FaizelPatel143, or you can even comment on facebook.com/Faizel Patel. Fi amanillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى أناجي الحق في ليل بهيم أصدق النجوى وأدعو الله من قلب سليم يطلب التقوى. إلهي صرت في ظرف عصيب فاكشف البلوى، فيا ربي أنا عبد لرد